seems to be an awful lot of sad stories in the news today, and there are thousands missing. Does anybody care? We built a channel where we talk about those faces. Talking news. Debbie. Cassie Barons has still not been found, and it's been 2 years since her case first hit the spotlight. Breaking. Child Daybell and Vallow both behind bars. Sarah Galloway was found. She wasn't found alive. What happened to Sarah Galloway?
It's too heartbreaking to share.
Children are still missing. Children like Dorsey. You're in shame. You just got away with it. Welcome to Talking News. Hello everyone. My name is Debbie. We use big stories to push little faces.
Hello everyone, welcome to Chasing a Murderer Talking News. And today we are going to do a Chasing a Murderer episode, Life Beyond the Grave, which is attached to this horrible case involving Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. This is part 50 of the series. And to try to catch up, I'm going to do mostly audio for a few series. And lately I've been on the go. So guys, I want to say before we get started, if you enjoy the work that I do, because I do a lot of researching, I put a lot into these, if you could please subscribe, like, and comment, because in order for YouTube to recognize, creators like myself, we have to have the support. And to those that have supported me over the years, thank you so much. Love you guys so much for that. Let's get started. 2015 is a very important year in this story. And to me, after all the research that I've done, it seems that a lot of this horrid case starts here. This is where it gains momentum. These, what I want to call diabolical teachings or beliefs, brought forth to many people from a few shining stars. There's a new sheriff in town when it comes to end days, especially prophecies, and it's Julie Rowe and Chad Daybell, and that's just to name a few. They're warning people of disarray, unruliness, wickedness, and preparedness, all attached to these end days. Not saying that they're the only one that's ever worried about end days. In fact, this has gone on since the beginning of humanity. So you had the Vikings who believed in Ragnarok. In 2800, the Syrian people predicted doomsday, as did the Mayans. Many people looking for end days and their signs are looking to the stars. So they're looking at the heavens, the moon, the sun, and the planets. And astrologists start talking about the blood moon, which actually started about 2014, but we're just going to cover, we have so much to cover already, 2015. And Mormons, by all means, are not alone in this. So you have Matthew's, where they talk of prophecies of end times, say there will be signs in the heavens that will point to his soon return and lead the repentance of many. Immediately after the tribulations of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall give her light, and then shall appear a sign of sun in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and then they shall see the Son of the Man, of man, coming out of the clouds with power and great glory. Isaiah 13:10 is also a well-known end-time prophecy story, and also it speaks of celestial signs. Hebrews also believe that the lunar eclipse is about Israel or the return of the Messiah. And many of these people that are looking for end days or preppers They go back and look at the histories. Like in 1979, there was a lunar eclipse. In 1918 was the last year of the eclipse coast to coast. And anyways, along with that came a great pandemic where 30% of the world was ill with influenza. And they say that this resulted in more deaths than 100 years of the Black Plague. And then you have those that warn of the future. And I want you guys to remember this date, April 8th, 2024. Okay, just remember 2024. So, Chad and Julie Rowe, this is what they're making their money off of. They're starting, well, this isn't the only thing, and we'll go over that shortly, that Chad supports through his publishing company. By all means, it's not the only thing. However, that being said, that is what he is personally obsessed with. So here's a little catch up for you. So Chad's book company, we know, had great success according to his blog, and it formed in 2004. The company was producing about 24 titles each year. In fact, he was doing so well that he said he had to move to a larger warehouse to stock his inventory because he just couldn't keep up with the orders. He has like 50 different authors, from sports to LDS novels. But he mentions the fact that one of his best sellers of the time was, I guess it's Bright Ideas for Young Women. Interesting fact that I think you guys should keep in mind is the fact that LDS, the bookstore, names Chad's publishing company the Small Wholesaler of the Year. So that's at the LDS Bookseller Convention back in 2005 to 2006. And remember, there was a recession that hit this nation, and it hit a lot of people, not just Chad. As it approached, the government actually denied for years there was a recession because so many small business owners were struggling for a long time till finally falling under. They waited until it got to a point they couldn't deny it any longer, and by then there was no help for these businesses. These businesses collapsed, and Chad's being one of them. Chad says he actually, ended up working as a sexton again. We know this because we did a lot of details on that on earlier parts of the series. Chad says after Spring Creek went into what he called hibernation, he mentioned that the only way that he made it really through this kind of thing was a former American Idol finalist, a woman by the name of Carmen y'all forgive me, Rasmussen, helped him along. So that's an interesting fact in my opinion. So by 2010, Chad had written 3 volumes of the Standing in Holy Places series. And Chad's vision of a dark-haired, tall woman he saw talking in a spacious building to large groups of people with him by her side. And this was interesting to me, the choice of words. He said he imagines himself sitting near her, and now he knows her voice or recognize it from anywhere. January 2014, he finds Julie Rowe on a preparedness website, and the two exchange words through email. Interesting choice of words. He says he works up to call her because he says this makes conversation easier. And if you guys remember through the series, they really didn't even meet until mid-July of 2014. Where do you think they met? Well, they hung out at the BYU Bean Museum. At some time in July of 2014, Julie speaks at Logan's Tabernacle, which we've gone over too, but we didn't go over this part. And she's speaking to about a group of 200 people. And like Chad says in his visions, he said he sat near her on the stand while she addressed the crowd. And Chad said the vision was fulfilled like he had seen a few years earlier. In Chad's blog 2015, he writes that he's writing a novel, Escape to Zion. For Chad, his visions are becoming quite meaningful, powerful, and impactful. And in a blog, he mentions the fact that he was having many dreams and visions relating to his family and the future. Here's an example of one of the visions and dreams that he was having attached to his family's future. It's written on the blog August 17th, 2015 on his website. He said, one night he had a vivid dream that Tammy, his wife, had taken the kids to Spanish Fork Kmart. For those of you who don't know what Kmart is, this is like the Walmart of our day. In the dream, I watched Tammy lead the kids across the parking lot to the store entrance. Then little Seth broke free and stumbled ahead of the others. I distinctly noted that he was wearing a particular pair of blue overalls. And let me tell you guys, a lot of kids wore a lot of blue overalls, especially Oshkosh back then. He continued with, just then a blue Cadillac driven by a Polynesian man came speeding by and ran over Seth, killing him instantly. The dream obviously disturbed me, but I had to leave work before Tammy woke up. So later that morning, I called her. Before I could tell her about the dream, she said, got the kids ready, and I'm taking them to Kmart. He mentions the fact that his son Seth was wearing blue overalls around that time of his dream, and that he was all so tiny. He immediately asked what Seth was wearing, and it was those blue overalls. I told Tammy about the dream, and we agreed that I should go to the store with them. I have no doubt it was a warning dream sent straight from heaven. So that's something I want you guys to understand, that he really and truly says that he believes that these warnings are sent straight from heaven. Another dream that he kept having at this time, he says, was of the Twin Towers and that they were burning. He says he was always on the street below the towers. So here he's trying to claim that he's a visionary who has seen the warning signs before the towers were attacked. He said that they were both on fire and people were running and screaming. However, he did not know the cause. And he claims that from his vantage point, it seemed that all of this was happening on Manhattan, and that it was on fire. So he said he had a dream, and that dream had a deep personal significance. And this was since he served his entire mission in New Jersey along the Hudson River. The Twin Towers were like a central beacon to him. Just to prove it, guys, he says that he has a picture with them in the background. Why is this important? Well, this is stuff that he included in Escape the Zion. So, a book that he wrote with the main character being Emma. Guys, remember now, there's a lady by the name of Suzanne Friedman, who is an author who also had her book published through Chad's company. Chad presents himself in a way that he's an expert and that he's kind of questioning her near-death experience. But I'm not certain if Suzanne Friedman's aware of this, but he later admits to it in his blog. And pretty soon, these two will have a bit of a falling out, because Suzanne kind of loses her admiration of this guy, Chad Daybell. She suspects maybe he's not so good of a guy. But no one's going to really know about this except for her and Chad, and we'll talk about that shortly. So back to Julie and Chad. It seemed that Chad had found his partner in crime. Let's jump back to 1988, when Chad Daybell is actually on his mission in New Jersey, and he's partnered with Elder Hempworth, which is one of his favorites. He says the two of them really clicked. They are actually going out, wanting to spread the word, share their information, share their Book of Mormon with other people in the area. And one day, that 1988, they knock on a door and a lady answers. They said she seems really polite at first, but then they start talking about the Book of Mormon, and at that point she changed into a maniac right before their eyes. She screamed, "You are the devil. You've added to the Bible. I am a born-again Christian, and I condemn you." Chad says she continues to shout a few minutes longer, When finally he says, "Okay, thanks. I guess you don't want to hear our message. Please take this free Book of Mormon and just read through it." So you can see, even though she's upset about, their presence and their teachings, he doesn't care. He believes in what he believes, and he wants her to believe it as well. Instead of being sympathetic to her emotions at the time, he's just pushing his idea. And he doesn't understand the fact that that actually sends her into another profanity-laced episode. He says that he and his friend, Elder Hempworth, shrug their shoulders and walk away. They walk over to a nearby apartment where they sit on a bench. Chad said he actually felt like crying, and he noticed that Elder Hempworth was equally frustrated. He sat there muttering, sorry guys, "I must be changing because the old me would have punched her lights out." That's just what a man of God should say, right? Chad said, "As I cracked up, Hempworth says, 'I'm serious. I wanted to kill her.'" And Chad said at that point he agreed, and suddenly both of them were laughing. So this woman isn't the one coming up to their door, knocking on there, pushing her belief system. It's them, and they think that, this was wrong of this lady to feel that way. An hour later, they're walking down Broadway Avenue in Union City. He said as he crossed 48th Street, it felt to him as if he hit into a brick wall. Some sort of power was not going to let him take another step. At that point, he felt prompted to track in an old brown building off to the right. Said he tried to shake it off, but the prompting came again. Elder Hempworth looked back at him, and he said he tried to go forward again, but he couldn't. So he said, "Why don't we track here?" As they climbed to the top floor, a young girl named Esther came down the stairs. When she saw them, she stopped and said, "Hello, elders. Do you want to come visit us?" And they say yes. She led them back to her apartment. So here we are, 1988. He's feeling promptings. He's running into powerful energies, brick walls. Now, Chad says that they never seen this girl before, but she seemed to know all about the church. She poured them juice and gave them some cookies. After a minute, Chad says, "Are you a member of the church?" And he says she gave him a surprised look and said, "Of course. Didn't you know that?" She explains that she's living with her uncle, aunt, and cousins who are also members of the church. They find out that there's a daughter, a husband, and a son that lives on the floor below. One of them being Jorge. He says that they go down and they teach and have a discussion with him after reading the Book of Mormon. And he says that this guy says, "I think it's true." Then he mentioned he had some very interesting dreams about his family's future. In one dream, Jorge is fighting off Satan's efforts to get his family. But before Satan can reach them, a light shines and Satan departs. 1988, here he is talking to other people who are having these vision dreams that, well, he sees his family on the battlefield engaging in a battle of life and death. He says at first they are winning, but then they start to lose. But Jorge tells Chad that he comes into this scene, and then once he comes in, they win the battle. Jorge looks to Chad and asks him what he thought they meant. And Chad says, "I felt that they meant that Jorge would join the church and lead his family back to the full activity of the church." So here, in my opinion, this is Chad's efforts to actually manipulate things that are seen in visions to fit whatever his agenda is. This also, you can tell by what Chad says next, makes him feel like he's gaining even more power. He says a few days later, He met up with his family again, and his spirit was nearly overpowering. He and Jorge start discussing the Mormon belief system and said, well, he interrupts Chad and says, I wasn't going to say anything, but I just need to tell you that there are halos around you. You are both surrounded by a halo. He's referring to Chad, an elder that is beside him. Chad Daybell admits that he could not see the halo. However, this was a special confirmation for them and to Jorge. He says that whatever they are discussing and teaching is absolutely true. This isn't a story about Jorge, but Chad says later on in his blogs that Jorge actually gets baptized and later serves as a bishop of Union City First Ward. So anybody interested in getting hold of this Jorge, and it last name spelled Yesenia, I feel that, he probably has a lot more he could share about Chad Daybell if he's not afraid of what people will think of him. He says that this guy actually reminds him of a Puerto Rican descent, a man that he met that he becomes close friends with. So he admits that he is very close friends with this guy, Hector Sosa Jr., who is also attached to this case. He says in 2015, Hector Sosa Jr. is on a website where he is sharing a few dreams, visions that he's had throughout his life. And that just recently in 2015, he's having dreams about his family's future. Chad mentions the fact that he reads these posts and he's very interested in that. Then he says that it reminds him of the things that Jorge was sharing with them, which was 30 years earlier. We've already covered this, but I want to go ahead and mention it anyways. The fact of how Chad really started getting closer to Hector Sosa. He met him through a website, a prepper's website, the LDS website, but he's having these very strong voices. He says, talk to him, telling him to go knock on Hector Sosa's door. Chad writes, I hate receiving those kind of messages. I know how writing a book can change a person's life completely, for the good and bad. He claims that he hadn't sent him an email message. He just somehow finds him, and it's during a time that he's living in Springville, and just knocks on this guy's door. So here's what's interesting. A lot of people are like, does Tammy know about this? Well, Chad says that he grabs his jacket. He tells his wife, Tammy, I need to go tell someone they need to write a book. He says she is fortunately accustomed to this kind of thing. She said, okay, I'll see you when you get back. When Chad gets there, he actually uses the fact that he's published Julie Rowe's books. Have you heard of her? And Hector nodded, said, yes, I've read her books. So you can see the connection between these three. Dark tales of major earthquakes shaking the earth so bad that it's going to send humanity as we know it plunging into the depths of hell. Chaos rained down like no thunderstorm ever before. And Hector Sosa has written something, attempts to write something in his book that Chad says that it's so chilling that he wondered whether he should delete the last sentence. Hector Sosa said that he had a spirit tell him that the last paragraph had to be written word for word. He said, I left it as it now stands in that book. And it makes me wonder now, is he just brilliant at catching the eye of those that are looking for the signs? There's no doubt in my mind some of Chad's favorite people are some of the biggest visionaries that are big on the end times. So Jorge, Hector, and Tammy Sosa, Julie Rowe. And at this point, the blood moon is just days away. In news articles, it says that the blood moon, which brings in days of September 2015, is popularized by two pastors, John Hagee and Mark Blitz. Well, I think they kind of got some of this stuff wrong because it was actually Julie Rowe was part of it. This series of 4 consecutive lunar eclipses between August 2014 and September of 2015 signals that it is the beginning of end times. There are articles going up all over the place mentioning Julie's name and her popular theory that end days approach. But that's not the only interest these media sources have. They want to talk to the church as well and get their comment. It's very confusing to people that are non-LDS because they always hear the church, speaking to its members about preparedness. And now their members of the church are coming out openly and getting quite popular books pushing this agenda that the church supports their theory. But the church knows that they rather not have to step into this limelight and say anything at all, but they know right now there's a fire brewing. It's going to turn into a bonfire if they don't. And the church will have to say, look, these guys, this is their personal accounts or positions, and they do not reflect the church doctrine. But Chad actually writes a memo on this. It's late August, and the church's seminary and institutes department issued an internal memo entitled Spurious Materials in Circulation. This memo is updated periodically to clarify statements given by general authorities, halt rumors about the church policies, or list books that were being used inappropriately in the classroom. Julie Rowe's book fell into the last category, and here is the actual statement. Publication caution. A Greater Tomorrow. My Journey Beyond the Veil. Additional information August 31st, 2015. In 2014, Spring Creek Book Company published A Greater Tomorrow. My Journey Beyond the Veil by Julie Rowe. Although Sister Rowe is an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, her book is not endorsed by the church and should not be recommended to students or used as a resource in teaching them. The experiences she shares are her own personal experiences and do not necessarily reflect the church doctrine, or they may distort church doctrine. This statement needs to be placed in the proper historical context. Look at the date, August 31st, 2015. Why would the church issue a statement at the time? Well, the new seminary year is just underway, and the students were studying an Old Testament. As readers know, Julie spends several pages in A Greater Tomorrow describing what she saw concerning ancient prophets. Julie gives detailed accounts about Adam and Eve and Noah's Ark, Abraham and Isaac, and even someone's lustful wife that aren't in the scriptures or in the seminary manuals. Undoubtedly, many instructors have read the book during the previous year and were supplementing their lessons with these very interesting tidbits. I still have never received any explanation from the church about the eternal memo, but that's my assessment of why a caution was issued. Julie and I wholeheartedly agree with the church's stance that these accounts should not be shared in seminary or institute classes. Please note that Julie's second book, Time Is Now, is not included in that statement, which lends credence to my Old Testament theory. So I wanted to share this because I know that a lot of people could get an idea of how Chad's mind works and how he was standing up pretty much against the church leaders while bending the knee. He's saying, yeah, the church is right, but why are they doing it? So at this point, these are the first steps, 2015, that you see this group really believe that they are above the true prophets of the Mormon Church. And it's at this point that Lori Vallow's really gotten heavy into Chad Daybell, reading everything that he writes, along with Julie Rowe. Now, one would think that the relationship between Chad and Julie Rowe seems to be beyond platonic a bit. In which sense, I'm not positive. Is it, spiritual? Is it lustful? Powerful? Well, you'll have to decide. There's no doubt in my mind that Chad truly is intrigued by Julie Rowe, and Julie Rowe is supporting that. This must be something Lori Vallow also notices, that Chad and Julie are a very close clique, and how he is basically supporting Julie through publishing her books, through speaking, and now trying to defend her against the church and their concerns. I went over my 20 mark time on these videos. And so here's the thing. There's lots of goodies missing in between here. Julie Rowe knows this, and hopefully one day she will come forward and share that and let the truth set her free. But I feel that the in-between in this case is very, very important to understand the entire case and why these things even happen. I want to say thank you to everybody, especially my Patreons who have been supporting me. You guys have been amazing. And also my subscribers, the people that's just been here from the beginning. I appreciate it from the very bottom depths of my heart. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys soon.